How about why don't you, Tommy? Why don't you tell me about your construction days here in Austin, Texas?
Oh, well, I worked in the construction field for about 40 years. Worked on a lot of buildings and built several here in Austin. Most of my work was, well, I'm going away again. Most of my work was what they call tenant finish, which in malls and shopping centers, people lease a space and then they build out their shop. The tenant builds out the shop, and I would build those spaces. Did quite a bit of that, mostly that. Built 2 houses, 3 houses, counting my own, and decided I would never do housing because people just get a little too bitchy about every little detail, which I don't blame them because it's the biggest investment they make in their life. Is you're building $150,000-$200,000 home. But I had one that I built for a UT physics professor who shall remain unnamed, and his wife turned out to be just the biggest bitch in the world. And she brought me some wallpaper for their dining room, and it was what they call flocked aluminum, which it looked like aluminum foil or tin foil, whatever you want. And then they blow on this shredded up cloth looking stuff for design on it. And she brought it to me, and it was silver and hot pink. The silver foil part, and then the flocking was hot pink. And I looked at it, and I pissed her off to start with because I said, this is going to look like a Mexican whorehouse wall. And she was going to put it all over her dining room, which this was a house out in northwest Austin, which was a high dollar home. It was like a $400,000 house, and this was in the 80s, early 80s. And she took offense at that. She said, well, that's what I want. I said, okay. And by the way, how would you know whether it's a Mexican whorehouse wall or not? I said, because I've been in Mexican whorehouses. And her husband came along later and apologized. And we put it on. And everything we did, when we completed it, I would call the architect because he had inspection. He would come out and inspect it and approve it or say, it could be better. Or it's not what we wanted. You'll have to change it. And if it turns out it wasn't what they really wanted, most of the time I got a change order for it. So, but anyway, I put this wallpaper on. And it was a substantial amount. The room was probably 15 by 25. Pretty good sized dining room, formal dining room. And it looked exactly like I thought, man. You'd fire the lights up in there and it was, it hit you like a ton of bricks. Mexican whorehouse is what it was hollering. So I get it all done, call the architect. He comes and approves the installation. I said, yeah. Looks like it's on there in the right way. I said, well, you can only put it on one way. And so he approved our installation. And then she came back and went, oh, that's not what I want. That's what you gave me.
Yeah.
And she said, well, we got to do something else. I said, well, you bring me whatever you want on that wall, and we'll make it work. I said, but you understand it's going to cost you. Well, I don't understand why. I said, well, my bid, she said, you bid to put the wall covering on. I said, I bid to put the wall covering on one time, which I've done. You supplied the wall covering. I called the architect. He approved the installation. And now you want to change it? I'm not changing it for free. I said, I got to pay somebody to take all that crap down. Then I've got to refinish the wall, but depending on the paper you give me, to smooth it out so I don't have a bunch of wrinkles and bumps for whatever you bring back. She got all pissed. It was like a $1,400 change order.
Ooh.
So we did everything, put the new wallpaper on, got it approved by the architect, and then she wasn't going to pay. She just decided she wasn't going to pay my change order.
Ah.
Okay, and it was, I mean, by the time you're putting wallpaper on and doing stuff like that, you're getting close to the end of the house. Well, this house was on Cat Mountain, which is a premier subdivision over in northwest Austin. Beautiful view, probably a 30-mile view down through the hill country.
Oh, yeah, I know it.
And so I just changed all the locks so they couldn't get in, because they had a key to go show all their friends, this is where we're moving, this is blah, 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 blah. And I just changed all the locks so they couldn't get in. And it did it on a Thursday night, is when she decided. She just told me, I'm flat not going to pay you.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So Friday morning I went down to the courthouse and filed a lien, and then changed all the locks Thursday evening. Well, Friday afternoon I get a phone call from Professor so-and-so. Tom, we can't get in the house, our key doesn't work. I said, yeah, I kind of figured they wouldn't, because it's a different lock. What for? I said, I'm not letting you in until I get my money. And I said, by the way, I filed a mechanics lien against the house this morning. So you can't do anything. You can't close the house until we settle all this up. Oh, his wife was furious. She called me everything but a white man. And that's when I knew I was not going to be a home builder. Just wasn't going to happen. But I got my money, gave him the keys to the new locks. The man was happy. The lady, she was happy in the end, but she wasn't happy with having to pay me my change order. One little lousy change order on a $400,000 house. If I recall, that house was $392,000 all told. And that doesn't count the cost of the lot. That was just the house. And she said, I'll never recommend you to a friend of mine or anybody who asks. You don't have to worry about it, because I'm not going to build another house after this. You ruined my house building career. I had two other friends. We all went into business within 3 months of each other. A guy named Hal Brown and a guy named Stan Miller. Stan was a home builder directly. He didn't do commercial work. And Hal did a little bit of both. And then he ended up just moving out of the city. I don't know what happened to him. But Stan and I had a deal. If somebody came to us and we go, hey, I need a house built, I'd give him his number. If they said, I got a commercial job, he'd give them my number. So, you get a kind of a symbiotic relationship like that. It works pretty good. And so that was the house before that I built was a little 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage. I mean, I had a set of plans. The people were just ecstatic to get the house, knew what they wanted. I said, the finishes, when we get down to putting finishes in, wall color, stuff like that, you pick them, we'll do them. It went just smooth, but it was a younger couple. It was their first house, and they were ecstatic to get that house, starting their family. It went without a flaw. But then you get people who it's like their third or fourth house, and it's their dream home. Everybody thinks the first was your dream home. If you're building houses to move into, you're probably going to build 3 before you even get close to what you really want. You always find something. You live in them for 6 months, you go, oh, I wish I'd have done this. I should have done that. I wish the kitchen was a little bigger. I wish I had an island in the kitchen. All of a sudden, your dream changes.
Yeah.
And I mean, it takes 2 or 3 tries to get it like you really want it. And even then, you're not sure. You're always looking for the next best thing. But
Keeping up with the Joneses.
yeah, there's a lot of that too. Your friends built a big old 5-bedroom house. Oh, I got to have 5 bedrooms and 5 baths. Oh, okay. As long as you're willing to pay. But again, like I say, it's the biggest single investment that you make in your life is your house. So you want what you want, and I understand that. But the fact is, you got to be a little flexible on your end when, okay, I made a bad decision here and now I've got to fix it. Well, you can't expect your contractor to fix it for free. He's done the work that he bid.
Yep.
Now you want him to undo that and redo it, so you're paying for it 3 times. That, or you get a phone call, I got this problem over here. I hired a guy to do this, and he fucked it all up. Can you come straighten it out? Yes and no. I can, but I don't want to, because it's going to cost you a lot more than you think. Because I don't know what I'm going to have to do to fix his problem. Or how much will you charge me to do so and so? Yeah, let me look at it and we can figure something out. But you're not going to be happy because it's going to cost you more than what he did to screw it up. Well, this guy was going to charge me $900. Can't you do it for that? No. I don't know why not. Well, because I got to undo his work. Then I've got to start from scratch. So, what do you expect? So I try to stay away from residential stuff. And then commercial, you get a set of plans. It's pretty much it till you come across something that's not going to work, or in midstream they'll change it, which as long as they change it before you get it done, you're okay. But commercially, you've always got usually an architect overseeing what's going on. So you go, hey, this isn't what they want or what they show, and now it's going to cost me this, but okay. You get it approved and you go on. Residential, you can't do that because it's personal. If they're building a shop, all they're thinking about, I've rented this space, I get 3 months free rent. After that, they're charging me, so I got to get it built out within however many days you got. Maybe 60, maybe 120, maybe 180, depending on the size of the space. I built an Eichmann sporting goods store in a shopping center that I had almost a year. So, but it was very detailed. I mean, the bigger the job, a lot of times the more detailed it is. A lot more cut up with different rooms and different areas and stuff like that. They make things a little different. The variety of it will do it, which is not hard to do. It's on the plan, so that's just the way it is.
How big did your business get?
My biggest year, I did $7 million in construction, which was pretty good size. I had 9 full-time crews of minimum 3 men. So I had anywhere from 25 to 35 guys working the whole time. And that's when I started having heart palpitations, because you worry about, my blood pressure went way up. You worry about keeping everybody busy. And it's not just the guys working for you, but it's their families. You're providing a living for, this guy's got 4 kids and a wife. That guy's got 6 kids. This guy's got 2 kids. And you worry, all those kids and families, they're going to have problems if you don't keep their dad busy or their husband busy. So I started stressing a lot more, and I said, nah, I'm through with this. And I got it back down to where it was me and 2 helpers. If I couldn't do it by myself, I had 2 guys that worked pretty much full time. Between the 3 of us, we got to. Then if we needed another helper or another carpenter, I had a list of names. Like, oh, you want to work this week? Yeah, come on over. And I just, I wish I'd determined that sooner, but I was high rolling in the early 80s. I mean, I was blowing and going. my best year, after I paid everybody off, paid all my taxes, did everything, I cleared $154,000, and it was a good year.
Yeah.
I went to Las Vegas about every 6 weeks, played blackjack, and it was fun until it dawned on me. Shit, you got these guys that you got to worry about their family. You know what I mean? If you're worried about the guy drinking the beer with on the afternoon, oh, no big deal. You know, okay, I'm sorry, guys, I'm out of work. But then you think, are they going to be able to get another job? How are they going to feed their family? How are they going to pay their rent, keep a roof over their head? You let all that stuff creep in before you know it. I can understand how these big company CEOs get stressed. You know, I mean, it's like, wow, well, you're making $500,000 a year. Well, trust me, they're probably earning it. You know, you look at these guys that are running these companies that have several hundred employees. If he's any kind of a guy at all, he's worried about all their families. All of a sudden, you're thinking, what I decide affects 2,000 people, and that's a big thing. So I scaled way back, and I was happiest doing that. I liked putting on a tool belt. That and the fact that, you know, you didn't have to have a crew on the job at 7:30 in the morning. I'd tell people, yeah, I'm doing this, and we'll be here at 9 o'clock. Well, why not 6? Yeah, why not? I own this company, and I set the hours. So we'll be here around 9. I'm not going to fight traffic to get here and stress out all day. Mm. So I'll get here, and we'll work till 6 or 6:30 at night. But don't expect me here or bright and early in the morning. We're not working Thursday. I got other plans. Mm-hmm. Well, why not? Because I've got other plans. That's the biggest reason. I own this company. And I had a guy one time, and I used to not let on. And I loved it when I would negotiate a deal, and then they would forget I was the guy. And in the middle of the job, they would come over and start bitching about something. And I go, yeah, no biggie, you know. I mean, you kind of get a workman's attitude because you got your tool belt on. Well, you know, you need to be more alarmed about this. Well, no, I don't really. Yeah. Who's your boss? I want to talk to the owner. Talk away. What? I am the owner. You know, and it just I can play a pretty good role of the dumb old country boy, and I love to do that because people will start saying and doing things that they think, well, it don't matter because this clodhopper is, you know, he's just a dumb old country boy. I'm a little smarter than I act sometimes. I know I'm smarter than I look.
So did you pick up those skills from your dad, would you say?
Yeah, my dad was pretty much could do anything. He was a welder by trade. But he could work on cars. He could do carpentry work. He could do plumbing work. He could do electrical work. And I had a basic knowledge of how it worked. Although I never wanted to be an electrician. I never really wanted to be a plumber. Air conditioning, back when I was a kid, most of the time, people just put window units in. You know, I didn't have a lot of friends that had central air and heat. Most of them had window units in their living room and in their bedrooms. And that was it. So anybody could stick a air conditioner in the window, brace it up, and plug it in. You got cold air. You know, heating systems were different. My dad built a gas heater, if you will. It was an iron box with a gas burner in the middle of it. And buddy, when he fired it up, he sweated. I don't give a damn how cold it was outside. It was hot in our house. In the wintertime, it was hot. You could pull up from the outside and you could see condensation on all our windows because the inside was so warm. and the outside was so cold. Where they met, where the glass was, it would just get a big sheet of condensation. And my dad built those, had a welding shop at the house, so he was known around town as the welder to go to. And then I had an uncle that was a builder, home builder primarily. My Uncle Bill. Had an uncle that operated heavy equipment, my Uncle Jim. Had an uncle that was a paint contractor, my Uncle Curly. And then my Uncle Bud worked for all the brothers, except he was a cabinet builder. And he could build cabinets and anything else carpentry-wise. And then I had an uncle that went off to college and became a school administrator. He was a teacher for a long time. Then he ended up being a superintendent. They got a junior high named for him at Church, Texas. My Uncle Raymond. And so, yeah, I picked up all the skills, I guess, from family. You know, I mean, at one time I was a pretty decent welder. Huh. And I can do plumbing if I need to. And I can do basic electrical work. I've never tried central air heat.
What do you prefer?
I prefer carpentry of all of it. I was going to school, and I worked. A friend of mine, I worked at a nursing home as an orderly, which is a nurse's aide position. I did that for a semester. And when you wipe enough old people's dirty asses, and, you know, stuff like that, I'm like, no, this isn't for me. And then a girl I worked with, her boyfriend was the foreman for a guy that poured curb and gutters and sidewalks around Austin. And I met him at a little barbecue thing we organized. And he said, man, what are you doing that stuff? He said, I was going to school 3 days a week. And I said, well, I can't find a decent job to where I'm paying. I was making $1.10 an hour. And I said, I can't find anything to help cover my costs. He said, well, go to work for me. I said, I can only work a couple days a week right now. He said, that's fine. So I went to work for him, and I learned how to do curb and gutter, learned how to finish concrete, doing sidewalks. And they were paying me $2.75 an hour, which was big money. I was working 2 days making as much as I was working 5 nights a week.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't have to work overnight. Huh. And then I got out of school for the summer and went full time. And then it was funny. I had a mustache. My hair was maybe as long as yours is right now. But they called me hippie because I had facial hair. Either hippie or doc, because I was going to school to try to go to med school.
Okay.
And they were like, hey, doc. No, that's hippie. That's hippie. The guy I worked for, his name was Joe Natek, and he was about 6'4", 280, solid. And Leonard Bachmeyer, the guy that hired me, he was Joe's foreman. And Leonard was probably about 6'4", 260, 280. And neither one of them had any fat on them. I mean, they were just big old stout German, Czech plowboys, you know. And it's funny because, and Leonard, we called him Tiny. Tiny. And he hired me. Joe didn't know he hired me. And I was working wrecking for him. When you set up a curb and gutter for him, you set a 2x12 in the back and a 2x6 in the front. And you get right out the bottom of it so it's equal distance from bottom of the form to the top of the form. And they have what they call a mule, which is a curb-shaped item. And you pour concrete, and somebody pushes that mule while 3 guys are shoveling the concrete to keep enough of it in front of you to form the curb. And nowadays they pour it in a machine, and the machine shits it out. I mean, you pour concrete in one end, and the curb comes out the other end.
Okay.
But we had to do it all by hand. Well, I became the mule man. But I was wrecking farms, and this guy pulls up in a brand new Ford XLT truck, top of the line. And I thought, that must be the big boss. Well, it was. And he got out and he walked by me and did this, looked real hard, walked a few more steps farther, stopped, turned around and looked, walked down to where Leonard was working, and I could see him pointing, talking about me. Leonard brought him down there and said, "This is the guy you work for." He said, "I'm your boss, but this is the guy you work for." And he looked at me and said, "Are you a hard worker?" I said, "Yes, sir, I think I am. I grew up in a family of 11, and my dad whipped our ass if we didn't do what we were supposed to. So, yeah, I'm a pretty good worker." He said, "That's all I ask." He said, "I'm not paying you $2.75 an hour to twiddle your goddamn thumbs." He said, "You can work or you can go home." We became big buds. I mean, Joe and I did. And he's the one that started calling me hippie.
Okay.
He would go, "I never thought I'd have a hippie working for me." Well, that caught, Everybody, "Oh, hey, hippie, hippie, hippie." And we had like 5 Mexicans, an old black guy, and me, and Leonard. And Cleveland Barton was this old black guy. He was 80 years old. And he worked for Joe only because he had worked for Joe when he was in his 30s. He knew him that far back. And he just thought, he'd go to him and go, "Mr. Joe, I need to work." He couldn't do shit. He would drag a 2x6 where we would pick up 2 of them and walk with him. He would get one to drag him. He was he looked like this mic stand. Skinny, sweet old man. And he started calling me Doc. He said, "Doc, what are you going to college for?" And I told him, he said, "Oh, Doc, now you're going to be a doctor." So for Cleveland, I was Doc. And for most of the rest of them, I was hippie. So it was an interesting experience, and I learned a lot working with those guys. I think that's where I learned to get along with everybody, because we had minimum at any given time, we had 4 Mexican guys, usually illegal aliens, and Doc worked along with us, Leonard, and then we had another guy, Tommy Reed, who was just arrogant as hell, and he was a dumbass country boy, and I let him know it all the time. So he just got on my nerves, and not a lot of people do, but you get along with people or you don't. And the thing was, you start working at sunup 7 days a week. I bet I poured conservatively 250 miles of curb and gutter in Austin, Texas. And you think about it, and that was in like a 4-year period. But every day we would show up, wreck the forms off the curbs we poured the day before, move them down, set them up, which involved moving them, driving stakes, nailing them to the stake, making sure the grade was right, putting in expansion joints, and then pour concrete. That was the last thing you did. Usually around 1:30 in the afternoon, you got your first concrete truck, and you poured the rough concrete, which had rocks, looked like the rocks off a railroad track, big 1.5 inches. And you shape it because you got these guys shoveling, and I would be on the mule. You got a handle up here and a handle at the bottom, and you just stretch out behind it and start walking, pushing, and it shaped that curb. And it was kind of a dry mix of concrete. It was wet, but it wasn't as wet as you see them pouring slabs with, And you had 2 or 3 guys in front of you shoveling to keep the backside with enough concrete so it would shape a curb. And then when you poured the rough coat, you would go back and pour a finish coat on top of that, which is sand mix. And you would pour a finish coat on top of that all the way to the end. And then you had a 12-inch brush by hand. Everybody brushed. But you had shovel guys, you had a mule guy, everybody could do a little bit of everything. I preferred the mule because that shovel gets heavy, man, as fast as you can go, because I could walk pretty fast.
Yeah.
as long as they kept me plenty of concrete. And every day we did about anywhere from 1,800 to 2,600 lineal feet.
Oh, wow.
So you're talking about half a mile every day. Wreck forms, reset forms, pour concrete twice. And then go back and do it again the next day.
And smooth over all the footprints and things that people put into it overnight, right?
Well, you can't. If they do it overnight, you're not going to smooth them out the next day.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it was in new neighborhoods, and you didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Sidewalks were a different story. So I got in a fight one time with a guy up by Lanier High School off of Peyton Gin Road.
Yeah.
I worked pouring all those sidewalks from 183 to North Lamar. And we were down near Lamar on the north side of the street. And we were finishing. I mean, we were through pouring for the day, but you work your ass off. Concrete's hard work. And I was kneeling down finishing, and I looked down there, and there's this fucking kid scratching his name in a brand new sidewalk. And I went, "Hey, quit that." He flipped me off. I picked up a rock, and I fired it down there and hit the little fucker. And I stood up, and he took off running. So I went down there and straightened out what he'd done. Well, about 20 minutes later, this truck pulls up with this kid in it and his dad.
Okay.
And I was still down finishing concrete. And his dad's just giving me what for, you know. "What are you doing, my kid?" Blah, 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 blah. I said, "Because the little bastard doesn't know better than to ride in the sidewalk." "Well, he's my little bastard." I said, "Well, you should have taught him better." Well, he jumps out of that truck. And by the time he got out around the front of the truck on from the driver's side, and I stood up, and he realized he was in trouble. Because in those days, I weighed about 205, 6'2", 205, and I was solid as that right there.
Yeah.
You know. And he decided he was still going to try to whip my ass. Didn't work. Man, you never saw so many people throwing trowels down. "Hey, a fight, hippies in a fight. Let's go down there and watch." All the whole crews were down there. I whipped this poor man's ass, and he got back in his truck, and they drove off. But it was so funny. And Joe showed up at the end of the day, and Leonard was telling him, "Hey, Hippie had a big fight today." "What do you mean had a big fight?" And I told him the story. He said, "Well, shit, I'd have whipped that kid's ass." That I just gone down there, taken my belt off, and whipped his ass. I said, "You can do that. I can't." I said, "I just threw a rock at him. I didn't know I was going to hit him. I threw the rock at him, but I nailed him, man. Hit him right in the side. Ah!" The kid screamed, jumped up, and I jumped up and started going down there. And I was going down there to see what kind of damage he'd done. But he'd taken the stick and was dragging his name in the concrete. You know, you see this nice, pretty smooth surface. Hadn't been brushed yet. But still, I mean, that represented, I don't know how many man hours of work, you know. And it's like, all I can think. When I was a kid, I would have done the same thing.
Hell yeah. I did it.
You know, wet concrete. Fuck you. You know, just whatever you can do. But when you're the one that puts all that hard work in, it's a different viewpoint.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I also wouldn't have flicked off a big construction worker.
well, you couldn't tell because I was down on my knees, you know, like I'm crawling across this sidewalk because they're 6 foot wide. So you put down what they call a knee board. You put it down so you don't mess up the concrete and it distributes your weight more evenly. And then you finish, pick that knee board up, move it over, reach out and get the next piece, come back to work. You know, I mean, it's a process. But it just, you can't really tell how big somebody is when they're on their hands and knees and you're 40 yards away. So, yeah, it looks like a pretty good sized guy. Well, but what was funny was his dad. Boy, he bailed out. He said, "I just ought to whip your ass." I said, "Come on." He bailed out of that truck, came around the front of it, and was like, whoa. Maybe I should have shut my mouth earlier. Well, he was already involved. It was too late, you know. We clocked him. I clocked him, and we started. He's like, all right. I said, get your ass in that truck and get out of here. Before I call the police.
Yeah.
You know, it's for damage, for vandalism. Well, actually, it was Leonard that came up. He said, tell him, you know, you can have his kid arrested for vandalism. And Leonard started writing down his license plate number, all this kind of stuff. He said, I'll file for assault too. I said, well, he didn't really assault me, you know. I mean, I don't want to create any more problems for the man.
Right.
He was protecting his kid. Well, his kid was in the wrong. Kid needed his ass whipped. I said, it's not my place to do that.
Yeah.
So it was funny. And then I collected some money that was owed me for a little job I did. I collected it at gunpoint.
Oh, really? Tell me this one.
Guy kept stalling me, wanting to pay me, and it was only for $280. He had a little curb and ditching in the middle of a commercial driveway, and I did it illegally. I went over there on a weekend, broke the curb out because it had an entrance drive here and an entrance drive here, and the curb was about as big around as this counter. You know, it went in, divided these two driveway approaches. And it bothered him. He wanted it out. I said, well, there's got to be a reason it was there. The city made him do it at some point. He said, I don't care. I want it out. What do you charge me? I said, $280. I'll break the curb out. I'll pour back concrete. You pay me $280 cash. He said, why so much? I said, because I got to rent a compressor and an air hammer to break the curb out. And that at that time was $65 a day. And I said, I'm going to have to do it on a Saturday, so that's probably going to be a little more. So I rented this compressor, busted it out. I got over there at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and I won't name the business, but they were closed on the weekend. Busted it out, threw the big chunks of concrete in the bed of my truck, graded it all out, called Syntax Materials Concrete Ready Mix. They came out, poured the concrete, and I finished it. Put up barricades around it so nobody would drive in it over the weekend. And I got through about 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. Went over to his house to collect my money. He said, man, I'm out of checks. Hell, I was moonlighting the job because I worked for a different person. And I said, all right. I said, I'll be back Monday and get it. I said, I'll come to the office on Monday and get it. Okay. So Monday shows up. I get off work about 2 in the afternoon. Go by thinking I'm going to get a check for $280. He's in a meeting. He can't see you right now. Okay. When's he going to be out? We don't know. Come by in the morning. I said, I can't come by in the morning. I'm working. All right, tomorrow at lunch. So I called. I still hadn't gotten my checks from the bank yet. I said, well, David, don't you think you need to be checking into that? I need my money. Yeah, well, I let him ride that whole week. And Saturday morning, I went over to his house, knocked on the door. I had a little .32 pistol. And I had it stuck in my pocket for some reason. I think I was going to the deer lease, and I'd usually take that gun to shoot snakes with. And he came to the door. I said, "You ever get those checks in?" Yeah. Okay. I'll take mine now. He gave me a check. It turned out to be bad.
Oh, okay.
I said, look, we're going to go to the bank. I went over there on Monday evening. I had my pistol. I said, we're going to go to the bank, and you're going to get my money. He said, well, I ain't got that much money in the bank. I said, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go to all these little drugstores and supermarkets in the neighborhood and cash checks for whatever amount they will allow you to till I get my money. I said, so get your checkbook. I said, get your checkbook. And I didn't really pull my gun out. I had it stuck in my hip pocket. And so he came out and got in the truck. We went to Minimax. We went to Sam Slaughter's. We went to, every little place that would let you cash a check. It's like, well, our limit's $5 with purchase. I said, buy something. Write it for $5 over. I got it all but about $5. I said, all right, David, you're off the hook. Dropped him off at the front of his house and drove off. Never heard from him again.
Yeah.
I was a little worried he was going to call the police on me. Never did. So.
You earned that
But I got my money.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Had an old man in South Austin. He was a physics professor at UT. Got a house off of Pleasant Hill Road, I think's the name of it. And our little Circle Drive, I can't remember. Anyway, it's off of South Congress before you get to William Cannon.
Okay.
And he had a Winnebago camper, the motor coach.
Uh-huh.
And he wanted to pour a place to park it. So he wanted a 25 by 25 concrete pad. And he said, can you do it? I said, yeah, because I was working for a guy doing sidewalks and other stuff for a different guy than Joe Daytech. And he said, can you do it? He said, I don't want to pay some contractor an outrageous sum. I said, yeah, I can do it. He said, what do you charge me? So I gave him a bid. So I poured the concrete, started wrecking the forms, left them laying beside the little slab. And I mean, it was beautiful, little perfect level slab. Everything looked good. And I gave him my bill, and I'd put a markup on the materials where I had to buy the 2x6s to form it with, had to buy the stakes to form it with, box of nails, concrete. And concrete in those days was $15 a cubic yard. And so I put a buck or two on top of it for a handling fee, So I just put it in my invoice. Concrete, $16 or $17 a yard. Turned it into him, and he goes, I'm not paying this bill. I said, excuse me, this guy was like 80 years old. I said, what do you mean you're not paying it? He said, that's not what you paid for that concrete. I called Syntex Materials, and they charged $14.90 a cubic yard. I'm not paying you $17. I said, well, there's handling charges, bookkeeping charges, there's all these other charges, which I didn't have, but he didn't know that.
Yeah.
I knew bigger contractors did that. I said, well, I'm not paying for it. I said, well, you can pay me or I can pull my shit up. He said, no, you can't. I'll get the police out here. I said, you can do whatever you want. So I went over to my truck. I just finished loading up the forms. And I took out a 16-pound sledgehammer. And green concrete's very easy to break.
Uh-huh.
What they call green, it hadn't cured very much yet. Man, I took that 16-pound sledge and I got to the corner of that slab. I raked a little dirt out from underneath it. Bam! That corner broke off. Just I thought the old man was going to have a heart attack. You can't do that. I said, yeah, I haven't officially left the job yet.
Yeah.
You can pay me or I can break this up. I'll call my buddy. We'll load the pieces on my trailer. We'll be out of your hair.
Yeah.
You can't do that. I said, well, yes, I can. Go call your lawyer. He went in the house for about 30 minutes, came back out with a check.
Guess he talked to his lawyer.
Mr. Fisher. Never forget that guy. He looked like Mark Twain.
Oh.
and he was a UT physics professor. His wife was the principal of the elementary school they lived right behind, or right down the street from, Pleasant Hill Elementary. So, yeah, it was pretty funny. I met some characters in my day, that's for sure.
Did you ever have any death-defying situations?
Yeah, I did. I worked for a guy that on the east side of the UT Stadium, there used to be a big parking lot. And I worked for an excavation company doing dirt work and paving. And they had one of those big steamrollers. You know, I mean, roller in the front.
Oh, yeah.
Big old wheels. Hell, the wheels were 6 feet, 8 feet tall and 2 feet wide. And it was just flat steel. And you did that when you poured the asphalt, you would compact it with that so it would tighten up and be like it's supposed to be. And we did that. The parking lot was at the end of Manor Road. Manor Road used to run into UT Stadium.
Okay.
Out here at Martin Luther King and 183, it may still be there. There was a little strip shopping center that to this day, I don't know if it's leased anything. They had some kind of big legal brouhaha and it never got leased up. But the company I worked for, Starfield Constructors, we did the excavation, dirt work, curb and gutter stuff, and paved it. And we're going to pave it. Well, we put down the caliche, which is the white crushed limestone base, and you had to compact that with a roller, and then you put your asphalt on top of that. So my boss was a guy named Doug Cornelius. I was in my 20s. Thought I was invincible. And Doug was in his late 40s. Nice guy. And he said, we got to get that roller and all this equipment out to Cavalier Park. I said, okay. He said, I'll drive the maintainer, the big motor grader. He said, think you can drive that roller? I said, yeah. Okay, so we took off down MLK is what it was. It wasn't Manor Road. It was MLK. Coming out to go out to the east side. And there was one little area that was new housing, and it wasn't really well developed after you got past Airport Boulevard. And at some point, there was this big, deep drainage ditch. I guess a little creek bed or something. And the way you drove this roller is it had two handles, one on each side. It came up, and if you wanted to go left, you pull back on the left one. It turned that big ass roller. The roller in the front was as wide as this counter is long,
Okay. Yeah.
and about 6 foot high. Solid steel. Hell, this damn thing weighed probably 4 tons, 5 tons. And I'm clanking down the road. I said, just don't bring me out here during traffic. He said, all right, no problem. So we get over there in the middle of the afternoon. I fire it up. We fill it up with diesel. I'm coming out MLK. Ooh, dude. Smooth sailing. It had a little platform on the back of it that you stood on. A little 18-inch by 18-inch platform. You couldn't sit down. You stood back there. Right on the very back of 5 tons of steel. And I'm cruising along, and I hear this, some car just getting on it. Well, I'm just going over a hill. And there was a black high school over there off to the right. And I knew this guy was coming out of that high school just trying to impress his buddies. And I thought, if he hits the back of this thing, it's going to kill him and me, because I'm going to get squished like a fly. So I kind of eased to the right to make sure I'm not in the traffic lane. And when I do that, I slip off into the grass.
Oh.
And there's no traction.
Ooh.
Man, that thing was like bloom, 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 just rattling back and forth. I'm about to shit my pants. I wanted to jump, but I couldn't turn loose. I mean, it was scary as hell. I got to the bottom, and it righted itself. Didn't fall over. But had it fallen over, it would crush me. I had to crawl up out of the ditch, and I was trying to get it back out to Cavalier Park. That was this little place we were building to get Doug. And I'm hitchhiking because it's a good mile and a half out there. Black junk hauler. This black guy stopped. He said, "I saw what happened. You okay?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Where you headed?" I said, "Up here to Cavalier Park." He said, "Get in." He gave me a ride. Got Doug. I said, "You ain't gonna believe this." He said, "With you, I'll believe anything." So we got the motor grader, came back. He hooked the chain to it. He pulled me up out of the ditch. And went on that. Then, same company, there was a restaurant way out west of town called the Tumbleweed, Texas Tumbleweed. Sits on a hill. You had a beautiful view of Austin. And we were building that for a guy named Jack Ray. And I was running a smaller compacting roller. Same situation. I nearly went off the edge of that. And if I got off the edge of that, it was probably 80 to 120 feet down.
Ooh.
Fighting a 3-ton roller. Managed to save myself on that one.
Oof.
Same guy, Doug Cornelius. We shot a bunch of road beds in up in northwest Austin, Steck Avenue. None of those roads were there. And you drill it with a star drill and then drop dynamite down in it. When you put the dynamite in, you would put a quart oil can of ammonium nitrate fertilizer mixed with diesel.
Oh.
And buddy, that creates a hell of an explosion.
Sounds like
You pour that on top of the dynamite, then you'd push all the dirt back in that came out of the hole, and then you'd put sand on top of that and pack it with a stick about that big around. And then you wired it all together because it was all electronic. And then you had the old plunger, and you get everything wired together, check to make sure your circuit was good. Then you'd hook it up to we had about a 200-foot yellow extension cord wire. And you'd get it wired up to the field you were going to blast. And then you would drag it out, hook it up to the plunger. Well, Doug had to push the plunger because he had the license. And we had done some one time. We ran out of sand and we ran out of dirt, and there were about 4 holes that we didn't have enough to compact completely full. So my buddy Rick Hall and I said, we'll just add a little more fertilizer. We didn't know what did what. We were just idiots. And so we put an extra can of fertilizer in these 4 holes. Got everything wired up. Doug pulled back up the hill with the cord. Got the plunger ready to go. Fire in the hole. Everybody within a quarter of a mile that could hear you would move. Man, he hit that plunger, and it's a delayed reaction. You see the handle go down. You hear the little whirring in the box. Then all of a sudden, boom, it was usually a big thump. And it would lift dirt up maybe a foot, busting up rock, limestone rock. And then they would come in there with these big 977 cat loaders, dig it out, put it in dump trucks, get all it off. Well, we were dump truck drivers and dynamite monkeys, So we didn't realize what the role of fertilizer played. All I know is these dirt flew up in front of us, and we were a good 150 feet away from the blast area. Bigger than footballs. Big old chunks of rock.
Ooh.
Up in the air, coming down where we're standing, thinking we're safe. And Doug about shit, man. We did too. And he said, what the hell did y'all do? Nothing. Must have been a fissure in the rock. That was our excuse every time. There's a crack in the rock, so it was already loose. Fissure my ass. That could kill somebody. I mean, these rocks they were good size. They were about the size of that box.
Jeez.
And they're landing 150 feet away. If it had hit somebody, it would crushed them, you know. Tell me the truth, what'd you do? I said, we put a little extra fertilizer in some mold. Because we had to drive about 3/4 of a mile to get another truckload of sand. We had an old 56 pickup truck, that Chevy, that we'd go load up sand in the bed of it and use that so we'd empty our field out, you know. And we ran out, and I said, I don't want to drive over there for 4 fucking holes, you know.
Yeah.
Not worth it. He said, he could hurt somebody bad. But I guarantee you, there were some guys working on some housing slabs, and they were setting forms, tying steel, doing whatever. And used to, we'd holler, fire in the hole, and they'd just stand up. And then it would go, and set back down. Well, after that one, whenever somebody screamed fire in the hole, those guys would go get in their trucks and drive off. Then come back after the blast. Crazy stuff. Crazy.
Got any more on construction?
No, not really. Except I was a superintendent on a job off of Montopolis and Ben White over here. There used to be, before anything was built up out there. This was in the 70s. My first job as a superintendent, as the boss on the job. And it was wrapping up. You know, all the heavy work was done. But we had a bunch of illegal aliens, wetbacks, that worked for us. And all around this building site, it was just maize fields, cornfields, and maize fields, where there was still a lot of farmland over there. And there must have been 20 Mexican illegal aliens working for us. And they were setting the steel joists to put the roof on, and a guy fell off of one because they had set them, and they would just walk from joist to joist and then tack weld them till they could get somebody to come along and weld them better. And this guy fell down on the concrete slab, and he was unconscious. So I'm running to the job shack to call for an ambulance. And a guy in the crane that was picking these joists up had a 2-way radio to his shop and Austin Equipment Rentals. And he gets on his radio and says, got a guy that fell, we need an ambulance. Well, when that goes over a 2-way radio system, Sheriff's Department, Police Department, wreckers, ambulance, and his shop, man, all these sirens start going off all around us. Man, they're flying to get over there to see what happened. I look up, and there's not a single son of a bitch left on the job.
Huh?
Like, where the hell they go? Well, they're afraid. They were afraid of immigration, getting caught and getting sent back to Mexico.
Yeah.
So they ran out in those maize and cornfields and ducked down. And every so often you'd see this little head come up. And once all the law enforcement cleared away, they came back.
Yeah.
But it was funny. It looked like little birds.
Or whack-a-mole.
Yeah, it did. It'd be in a different spot every time. But other than that, no, not really. I was working on a job in Houston, a concrete tail wall job. Saw a guy's head get crushed.
Oof.
And
Got to hear this one.
well, tilt wall construction, you pour the slab, and then you form the walls. They're concrete. You form them on top of the slab. And then when they cured long enough, you bring a crane out, and it stands them up, and you put them in place beside the slab. And then you brace them off until they can tie the steel in. And those concrete wall slabs, hell, they're, anywhere from 18 to 30,000 pounds, because they're 6 inches thick, maybe 20 foot tall. maybe 16 feet wide. And you get these big cranes, and they're always turning because they'll pick it up over here, turn it over here to the side, set it in place on the footing, tack it on the footing, brace it with a brace, so you could tie the joist in later. And we'd have usually 2 in the hole, usually 2 on top, and then you'd have a crane director that's telling him where to crane, whether take it up, take it down, swing it around, whatever. I had a guy named James Bowen, nice guy, but he partied all the time. I mean, every night he went out drinking and partying, and he'd come to work half hungover every morning. And we're standing wall panels, and these cranes, they have these leveling arms that you see that come out on the corners of them, big old pad that goes down on the ground,
Yeah.
so they can level the body of the crane.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it at an ankle. And there's these big arms, and they're probably about as big around as the box that case is in, or that board is in, maybe a little bigger. That where they've got this big piston that goes down out of it and sets the pad so they can level up. And they stay in place till you move them again. So you can do that, and you can reach maybe 4 or 5 panels from either direction. And James was doing the crane directing, and we were re-rigging some panels. They got what they call pickup points in the concrete, and you do hookups. They screw in big old bolts. We're setting up to pick up the next panel, and James put his head down like this on one of those arms where the pad was. Well, the counterweight on the crane, when they swing around, pinched his head.
Ooh.
Cracked his skull all the way. I saw blood, and I swear I saw gray matter, but I don't know. But at 9 o'clock in the morning, you don't want to see that.
No.
Our superintendent came out and said, "Go home. Deathly accident. You have an accident like that, major accident, you shut your job down.
Yeah.
Because your mind's on it all day long."
Right.
And then I had a guy who was superintendent downtown at the Littlefield building,
Mm-hmm.
60 Congress. We were doing the parking garage, and there was a guy named downtown, Roger Montgomery, went through a barricade and fell down an elevator shaft 65 feet.
Ugh.
Broke his pelvis, broke his lower leg, broke his shoulder, and broke his arm, and broke his glasses.
Lived. Wow.
Because they were laying up concrete block, building the elevator shaft. And there was a bunch of sand and stuff that had fallen down in the bottom, which would get cleaned out when they got finished.
Yeah.
Wasn't any sense cleaning it before it got finished. And all that soft sand is what saved his life.
Wow.
He went in the hospital and got a settlement from Hartford Insurance for $480,000. And it was his fault.
Yeah.
Man. $480,000.
So what finally why did you leave the profession?
Had 2 strokes. Had a stroke. And then 3 days later I had another stroke. The one that paralyzed me. So I retired right before my 55th birthday. Because I couldn't work. My right side was paralyzed.
Right, and that was probably just a couple years before I met you.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, it was probably 5 years before BD's opened.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, yeah, that's what that just made me quit working. I tried to do office work, wasn't the same. And my left-hand skills were terrible at the time. And I didn't have any computer skills whatsoever. And nobody was using computers. Nobody I knew was using computers in a large way. So I just quit.
That's right. You had to retrain yourself, right? Because you're right-handed.
Yeah, because I was right-handed. So last 17 and a half years, I've been lazing around on my ass. Except when John and I fixed the floor down there at BD's. He had had hip surgery. We got down to fix a little patch about as big as this right here. Took flooring up, put it down on the back side of the bar towards the front. Paulie had to come get us up out of the floor. John's hip wouldn't let him stand up, but my poor weak white right, I laid down and we fixed the floor. As far as I know, it's still fixed. And Paulie was laughing his ass off. Stand up, we can't. I can do what I want. John said, till I get a way to get up. He got us up. So,
I can do what I want.
Paulie was a hoot back in those days. So.
Yeah, bless his
And
soul.
other than that, I haven't done much of anything. Consult a little bit, but nobody wants to pay you to consult.
Right.
They think you ought to do all that for free.
Right.
So I stay away from my buds.
Or maybe they'll buy you a burger.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, we've been doing an hour 15 today.
That's not bad. I can feel my throat starting to get.
Yeah. Yeah, we usually get about an hour, so
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah, we got a lot of good stuff today. All right, we'll call that one done. Oh, it is, what is it today? The 18th, 19th? June 18th.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.